Okay, so this is the next part of our supplementary video for our table runner. I'm doing it on a smaller version so you can see it on camera, but you will have all the requirements that you need for the actual table runner. So you can see here, this is a larger one. I've just condensed it down to a small one for the purposes of demonstration today. So today I'm going to show you how to actually quilt your table runner. Now, if you're an advanced quilter, you can skip this part of the playlist and basically just move on to however you want to quilt it. But for those that have never done it before, I'm going to show you a great way of quilting table runners and or placemats or smaller sort of quilts and stuff like that. So especially if you don't have a lot of time and you don't want to do a lot of quilting on something, this is a great way of quilting everything together, and it's done super quickly. All right, so you're going to need to get your table runner. Okay, as I said, I'm using a little mini version here today, a little bit slightly different. So yeah, so basically I have just stitched some squares together. The pattern tells you how to stitch all your rows together. You're going to have 3 rows for yours. And basically what you're going to do is you're going to do exactly what I'm going to do here, but on your larger one. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to grab some backing, and you want your backing to be a little bit bigger than your table runner. About 3 to 4 inches all the way around would be good. In my case, I've got about 1.5 inches all the way around, as you can see. And then you want a piece of wadding or batting, whatever you call it, wherever you may live. It's different things for different people. You can use fusible fleece if you want to, and that will basically stick to the back of your table runner and it won't move on you. You still need to pin, but not as much. All right, the next thing that you've done, once you've got that down, you want to make sure that your backing is with the pretty side facing down, and you want to make sure that your wadding is all smooth and your backing is all smooth as well. Then you're just going to place your table runner in the center like so, and then you're going to grab yourself a few pins and you're just going to pin it into place. Now I actually use safety pins for this, and they are a curved safety pin, and you can find them over on DivanaLeeDesignStudio.com. So these are the pins that I use. Okay, as I said, they are curved. You can use, for something this small, you can just use your regular pins, but just be careful because you do get pricked by them. All right, so now once we've got this all laid out, so remembering that we have our backing with the pretty side facing down and the wrong side facing up, we're putting our batting down, and then we are putting our table runner on top of that. Starting in the center, we're going to place a few pins. Now, as I said, this is not very big. You will probably need about 3 to 4 pins per section of your, so per leaf. So this is the size of the leaf one in yours. Okay, you will probably need 3 or 4 to hold that into place. So the technique that we're going to use today is actually called Stitch in the Ditch, and basically what that means is we're going to stitch where our seams meet. So you do not want to put a pin in that place. Okay, so going through all 3 layers. Okay, and basically what I do, you can see here, I've just not closed the pins up. I'll close them up once I'm done, so if I've got to pull them out and reposition them, it's not too much of a hassle. So for this particular one, I am actually going to put a pin in each square so it doesn't move on me. And as I said, I'll probably put 2 or 3, maybe even 4 in this one. And I sort of am a little bit of overkill on the pins because I don't want it to pucker on the back. So basically you want to make sure that your pins are going through, you're not getting any creases on the back, and then you're smoothing as you're going, and then we'll be ready to stitch this into place. So as I said, I've done a smaller version just so it can fit on camera, so you can see the difference between the two. So here is the actual table runner. You can see that that is quite large. Okay, and I've done a stipple on this one because I'm more comfortable with my machine, but I'm actually going to show you the stitch in the ditch. And I use the stitch in the ditch method quite a bit when I do stuff on my smaller machine. If I'm time poor, obviously I will stick a table runner or whatever I'm working on in my long arm machine. But most people don't have access to that, so I'm showing you this quick way. This doesn't take long at all. And you just make sure that you go through 3 layers. Okay, and then once you've got your pins in, pretty comfortable. I'm probably add one more just there. Pretty comfortable with how that's looking. If it's sort of looking like it's a bit puckered on the back, take that pin out and repin it. Okay, and then just go around, and once you're happy with everything and the placement of everything, you can go around, do up all your pins. That way you won't get stuck. There's nothing worse than getting stuck by a pin. And sometimes it doesn't matter how much you try to avoid it, it always happens. Alright. Okay, so that is pinned into place. So we've got our 3 layers pinned together. You can see there that it's smooth on the back, and I'm pretty comfortable with that. So now what we need to do is we need to grab our open toe foot. Now you used this open toe foot when you were doing your applique, so you should still have it handy. As I've said before, the 2 types that I have a plastic one and I have a metal one. Now I am actually going to use the plastic one today because it has that mark in the center, and I can line up my needle with that mark and the seam. Alright, so basically what you need to do when you get to your sewing machine, what you need to do is take off your 1/4 inch foot. You need to place on your open toe foot, and you're going to lengthen your stitch length up to about a 4. Okay, and that's 4mm. And the reason that we're doing that is because we're going through 3 layers, so we don't want it to be tight because that could cause puckering, it'll cause shrinkage and all the rest of it. So what we want to do is quilt this together without getting too much shrinkage, and that's why we have this area around our quilt, because the nature of quilting is it'll bring it in a bit. But if we lengthen our stitch length, it actually won't take away from that too much. A little bit, but not too much. Alright, so then the next thing that you're going to do is you're going to put whatever cotton that you're going to use, but you want to make sure that your bobbin is either the same color as your top thread or the color of your fabric. It's entirely up to you. For me personally, I am just going to do white today, just so you can see where I've stitched, because this is just going to be put under, you know, something out in the studio as a little sample. Alright, so when we go over to the sewing machine, we are going to start in the middle. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch up this way, come down, stitch along here, go along here, come up here, stitch there, and come off down here. And then I will travel down here and I will do the same thing again. Okay, making sure that I am going wherever a seam or a piece of fabric joins, and that is stitch in the ditch. Now you can also just be just on the edge of where your seam is, but what we're aiming for today is to get into where those seams join. Okay, so I've come in a little bit closer and I'll show you exactly where we're going to be stitching, and I'm going to mark it with my pencil so you should be able to see it. If not, I'll try the friction pen. Okay, so you're gonna, when we're going to stitch it, we're going to separate, like not too much, we're just going to pull those seams apart, and we're going to stitch right in, that's not going to show up, that we're going to stitch right in where those 2 seams meet. Okay, so you can see there, that is where we're going to stitch, and we're going to do that along here and along here. So wherever you see a fabric joining together, that's where we're going to stitch. Now you can end your stitches, you can just basically come in here and go up and down. You can do that if you want, but if I like to just get a nice fluid motion throughout my piece, and I will sort of map out where I'm going to go so I don't have to end my threads, and I will actually stitch down the sides as I'm coming down really close as I can get to that raw edge, and that'll hold it all into place, and then we'll be ready for binding. All right, so I'm going to set up I've set up my sewing machine already. I've moved my needle to the center, and yep, that's to the center now, and I've got it set on a 4. I'm just going to tilt the camera just slightly, and we'll zoom in so you can see what I'm doing. And as I said, I'm going to start in the middle. Okay, and I'm going to just hand crank my needle down so I can see that that is going into the seam. Okay, and I'm starting where this 4 patch is meeting this center square. I'm going to hit the lock off button, and I'm going to I've put my needle in the down position. Now I'm going to bring it up, and hopefully that will bring up that bobbin thread, which it didn't. Okay, or did it? Maybe. Okay, so I've just, yep, there we go. So I've just pulled that top thread, and that has brought up my bobbin thread from the bottom. So now I've got a top thread over here, and I have a bobbin thread here. So I'm going to bring those 2 threads together and bring my needle back. Okay, and I'm going to go back down in, and now I'm going to, you can see there that it's going to do a lock off stitch. Okay, put my needle in the down position, move my longer threads to behind my needle so I can stitch. And what that does is it stops the bird's nest from happening on the back. So basically you won't end up with a little bird's nest of thread on the back of your table runner, and then you can just stitch away. All right, so I have just started there, and I'm going to now spin, and I'm going to go down this center part here, and I'm going to stitch in the ditch. Now if you go a little bit wobbly, don't stress it, it's okay. Okay, and then I've come to this junction. I'm going to keep going. And I'm trying my hardest to get into that ditch. Now I'm going to stop just before the edge of the table runner, and I'm going to pivot, and I'm just going to catch the edge of that square, and I'm going to pivot again, and this is all going to be covered up with our binding, so we don't have to worry about that. Now I'm going to come down to this next junction, and I'm going to stop it right there, and I'm going to pivot again. Okay, so you can see I'm just stitching along and making sure that I get into that seam, and sometimes it just doesn't happen for you. That's okay, and I'll show you what that looks like when you just stitch beside. I'm actually doing both of them on this one for you. Alright, so let me just pull that out, and I can show you another way you can do it if you're really struggling. So you can see here, just there, I've just gone right beside it. You can do that too, but you want to try and get into the ditch. So you can see here I've wobbled a little bit, but in here we've gone into the ditch, and that's what you're aiming for. Okay, so you've seen the 2 different ways that you can do it there. Okay, and then I'm just going to start that again. Normally I would have just kept going. Once you've done that, pull it out and get rid of all your threads, and then basically you're going to pull out your pins. That's it, really. That's it. We're done quilting. It's done. Alright, obviously this is only a little one, but it will take you a little bit longer. But that's all you're going to do, is you're just going to stitch that in place. And now what I will do, once I've taken all the pins out, I will give that a quick press and I'm going to trim it up, getting it ready to do the binding. Okay, so it's all pressed. Now what we need to do is we need to grab our ruler and our rotary cutter, and we're just going to trim off our excess wadding. And getting it ready for doing our putting our binding on. And all I do is I just line the edge of my ruler up with the edge of my table runner, and as you can see there, I'll just give that a quick trim. All right, so we're just going to set that aside for a moment, and now we're going to start on our binding.